Boker Tov and welcome to our 2016 Homeschool Family Conference. And in this session, we're going to talk about how to start a new homeschool year. Now, this session is really mostly designed for those who are brand new to homeschooling, you've never homeschooled before, and you have all these questions. And these are the most common questions that we have received over the last 3 years from new homeschoolers, and we've tried to compile them into a list. But if you're a veteran to homeschooling and you just need a good reminder as you start a new homeschooling year about what your priorities and plans are and really what's most important in your homeschooling, I hope this session will be perfect for you too. My name is Ann Elliott and I'm the creator and founder of homeschoolingtorah.com. Now, we get a lot of phone calls from brand new homeschoolers, and a lot of times my husband answers these and talks to the new customers and helps them out. And sometimes I do. And we sat down together on the couch and we made a list of what the most common questions we received are. Probably the most asked question we get from brand new homeschoolers is, what do I have to turn into the state? Are you guys a real a school? Can I like sign my kid up in your school and then the state won't come and bother me anymore because we'll just tell them that we're with Homeschooling Torah? And then I feel so bad because really we're not a school at all. All we are is a publishing company. And what I mean by that is we are just the people who publish the curriculum that is used in your school. We have absolutely no say over what your imagine you're as a big school, okay? You're this. In our home, we call ourselves the Elliott Academy. So here you are, you're the Elliott Academy or whatever your last name is. And you have a principal and you have teachers and you have students and you have a board of trustees and so on. That's how the state looks at you. The government of the United States looks at the families that are homeschooling as if they are teaching children that are enrolled in a school. So all we are the textbooks that are on the desk. That's it. We aren't the principal, we aren't the board of trustees, we are not the teacher. That's really important to know. We're not the student, we're not anything except the textbook. So our job is to come along and help the teacher with resources for teaching the students. And then the parents, that could be really exciting to hear this, or it could be terrifying, okay? I think the terrifying side is if you are feeling very unconfident that you have the ability to teach. And that's when I want to remind you that you are accountable to Jehovah, the creator God of the universe, and not to the state. Okay, yes, you are accountable to the state, and that Romans chapter 14 tells us, or is it Romans 13? Romans 13 says, let every soul be subject to the higher powers, for there is no power except that which God has ordained. But again, God ordained that power. He is the one to whom you are accountable. And if you can keep your mind on your loving Heavenly Father, who placed those children into your home specifically, not my home, not anyone else's home, but your home, because He knew that you were the perfect parent for that child, not me, not anybody else, but you. If you can just meditate on that one thought, it will revolutionize your parenting and your homeschooling year, because you'll rest in the knowledge that everything that comes into your lives, every circumstance, everything that comes into your day, every special need that your child has, every learning problem, every giftedness is placed there by design of a creator God who knew your name before the foundations of the earth. You can rest in Him, you can trust Him. Big breath, right? Okay. Now, having said all that, Romans 13:1 does say, let every soul be subject to the higher powers. I live in Michigan, and the homeschooling laws happen to be quite simple here in the state of Michigan. That's a relief for me, but we've lived in many states. We started in Florida. Florida is difficult because you have to have a state-certified teacher evaluate you every year, and you have to submit a portfolio and so on and so on. And there's always the chance that they may not recognize that what you did with your child is good enough. That was how I felt. But we moved away when my kids were still really young. And then we homeschooled in the state of Missouri. And in Missouri, it was a challenge because they cared more about how many hours we were in school each day. So I carefully tracked my time. And then you were always debating, is it class hours, as in each period. If you were in a high school, period 1 you have math, and period 2 you have science, and period 3 you have history. Those actually are how the state, I felt, was looking at it. And each period was an hour, even if it wasn't a literal 60 minutes. Or was it 60 minutes? Oh boy, we would just fret about it. And my child was very young, so it was really tough to come up with activities to teach him for all those hours. We didn't have the potty breaks and the recess and all the things that a public school would have. Then we moved to Arizona. Arizona, you signed your kid up one time at the beginning, and when he turned 7, you sent a letter to the superintendent. And our county was about the size of West Virginia. So it was huge, and there were very few homeschoolers, and all we had to do was send one letter when he turned 7, and that was it. Never a single more bit of reporting. Now, any of these stories I'm telling, the laws could have changed in these states, so please don't go on my word if you happen to live in Florida, Missouri, or Arizona, or any of the other states, because this was a long time ago, and I'm talking in the mid-90s. So things have changed quite a bit. Please don't go by this. But I'm just telling you my experiences. So then after Arizona, we lived in Iowa. In Iowa, we had achievement tests. And achievement tests were administered once a year. And that was a whole political thing. And then we moved to Minnesota. In Minnesota, we did have achievement tests as well, and a simple requirement to, I think in both states we had to have certain subjects included in our day. Then we lived in Wisconsin. It was also very similar, but we did not have the achievement test at that time. In a varying state, sometimes our kids could play sports and sometimes it couldn't. And it's just been interesting that every single state is so very different. That is part of the beauty of our country. And as you study, government and economics, and you learn about the sovereignty of each state, that's good. But it is also confusing when you're trying to use a curriculum from a publisher that is in the United States, or maybe over in some other international publishing company, and you're trying to tailor their curriculum to your specific laws. Maybe you're overseas and listening to this. Maybe you're in South Africa. Maybe you're in Great Britain, New Zealand, Australia, Israel. All of these places have different requirements than what I have in Michigan. So what we have tried to do as a publishing company is take the most common requirements in the United States, 180 days, but some people have less. I don't think there are any that have more. And we've tried to make sure that we fulfill them very broadly, but you will have to check. This is my point, my takeaway. You have to check with your state, your county, your school district, and find out what the laws are. And here's a website. I'm going to put it up here on the screen for you. It's Homeschool Legal Defense Association. You may join them. I strongly recommend it. It's $10 a month if you want to do it monthly, and it's even cheaper if you do it yearly, but $10 a month. Very inexpensive for peace of mind if you have a question, if you aren't sure about your legal requirements, or heaven forbid if someone knocks on your door and says, we're going to take your kids away. Heaven forbid. I don't hear of that happening very often, but if you did have that, they can help you. Even if you do not sign up as a member, though, you may go to their website and you may get information about the laws in your state. And I recommend that you go every summer, because the laws may change, things may be updated. They'll give you forms, they'll give you advice about not going too far above and beyond what the law requires. So my number one recommendation from the number one question we receive is go to Homeschool Legal Defense's website, get the requirements for your state, and make sure that you are being subject to the higher powers which God, the Creator, put over you. Again, the website, I'll have it below the video as well. All right, secondly, I would like to talk about how families, we tend to, as we're getting started homeschooling, we tend to look at the local public school and we compare maybe how we were raised and how we went to school and what school looked like for us, or we might compare ourselves with the local homeschooling family that goes to our congregation, or maybe there's one that lives in our town and we compare ourselves to them, or we might compare ourselves to what grandma and aunts and uncles might say a homeschooling year should look like, or we might compare ourselves to a blogger that's online. You might compare yourself to me, which is crazy because all I am is just a mom. I'm just like you. But I have a different set of kids than you have, with a different set of challenges and problems. So my takeaway for this one, it says in 2 Corinthians 10, verse 12, we dare not class ourselves or compare ourselves with those who commend themselves. In other words, who think they know it all, know about your family, know how you should do it best. They, measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves, are not wise. Don't join their ranks. Don't compare yourself to everyone else. Don't make yourself feel good by comparing yourself to some family that you perceive as doing a worse job than you. No, always compare yourself to God's Word and compare your children to God's standard. Don't worry about anybody else. Don't worry about what your mother-in-law thinks. Don't worry about what the superintendent thinks. Don't worry about what the cashier at the grocery store thinks. Don't worry about what Johnny down there in first grade, how many languages he knows and all of the times tables that he can say. Don't worry about what age your children can go to college. Maybe they'll be ready at age 12. No, don't compare. Maybe they will, but don't compare. Don't commend yourself by comparing, and don't compare yourself and make yourself feel like you're doing a lousy job and maybe God made a mistake and he shouldn't have put those kids in your home, because you know that's not true. That's not what the scriptures say. Compare yourself only to Him. So let's talk. A minute ago I mentioned a concept that I think has really been helpful for me. My husband was an administrator and a public school teacher for many years before he became a pastor. And one of the things that really hit home for me as I would help him prepare his lesson plans for his classrooms, and then later he would work on student handbooks and rules and regulations for their local school district. He was working in a counseling office at one point and would help students, have advice as to what classes they would take and give them advice, and oversee and observe the things that were going on in high school. And one of the things that I found was so interesting is this principle, or this idea that you are the principal of your school. And in our case, I like to say my husband is the principal. And if you are married, and the man is then therefore the leader of a home. So as the principal of the school, my husband's the principal. He, as the state looks at it and as God looks at it, the principal of the school is the one in charge of making the goals for the school and making the graduation requirements. So an incredibly common question we receive is, what does my child need to have to graduate? And how can Homeschooling Torah help us? Well, what you need to graduate, what your children need to graduate, is what you say they need to do to graduate. You are the principal. Again, there will be some requirements from the state. Often those are history and science and English and so on, and it just depends. You're going to have to find out what your state says, but it's very minimal. Really, I promise. So after that, maybe your husband is going to say, I want these subjects studied, and I want to make sure the child knows, my high school student knows these math subjects, and I want to make sure that he, has a good understanding of the Bible. I have a friend who requires her children, and you're going to hear from her, Katie Hearn from Hearn Homeschoolers. You're going to hear from her in one of our other sessions. And one of the things she says is, I want my children to have copied the Torah by hand. And then that's a graduation requirement. You need to sit down with your husband. You need to pray about it. You need to maybe do some research, and you need to set those graduation requirements. I want to tell you something. I get this question most often from people who have children in kindergarten, first and second grade. You have a long time before your children are in high school, and you don't have to have it all figured out today. If your children are in high school, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade, then you probably do need to be more serious and intentional about what your children are doing. So you can decide. If you have a child that has been gifted by God to go in a certain direction, then you decide what the graduation requirements are for that child. I would give you one word of caution, and that is, if your child is aimed toward college or university and has a specific career in mind, then you probably should tailor the classes that are required for graduation to that, at least a little bit, because they will want to accept your child and will want, if you want to get into an engineering program, you're going to need more science and math than someone who's going to go into an art major. So I'm not saying your children have to have it all figured out, but do be watching your child, observing what their gifts and talents are, and be aware of maybe the local universities and if there's a favorite place that might want to send your child. But for a lot of people, they don't have that goal in mind. And maybe you have other things in mind. Maybe you're homesteading and you have a certain agricultural thing that you want your children to learn. Have their education and knowledge exceed what you had. They have time at this point in their life that they will never have again. Make them read books. Check them out by the boatload and call them graduation requirements and have them read and give reports and do things. Whatever it is that your child is doing, you may set those requirements, and when your child has fulfilled those requirements, and you'll have compulsory ages, maybe they have to go in your state to school until they're 16, 17, 18 years old. When they have fulfilled the state's requirements and your requirements, you may issue them a high school diploma. This is not a GED. This is not low class. This is an official high school diploma given by the academy, the Elliott Academy or whatever that your child is attending. Now, that gives you a lot of freedom. And also I want to have you take another breath. It's okay. We're gonna make it, okay? Now also, year by year, I want you to realize that I'm assuming I'm talking to you, the parent who's teaching. You are the teacher of your children. And the teacher is usually responsible often for the curriculum, not always. Sometimes that's a joint decision between teacher and principal. But often you are responsible for the methods which are used in your homeschool. You are the one who is going to look at your children and notice their needs and notice their gifts. You are the one who is going to pay attention to the learning styles, both your learning style, but often the child's learning style is very different from yours. You're going to need to learn about different ways that people learn. And I can recommend you go to the library and check out books on that, and you become an educated teacher. And finally, you are in charge of methods. Now, if you choose a curriculum company, by that point, you often use the methods and the suggestions that they give to you. And I do recommend that as a brand new homeschooler, it's a good idea to use a curriculum because you have so many things that you're getting used to, so many things that are brand new in your day, that one of the things is nice is to just not have to worry about one more thing and to have somebody give a suggestion. But as you move through the school year, you will notice the places that you are different from the writer of the curriculum. And if you're using Homeschooling Torah, that's where you're different from my personality and style. My personality and style are just the way I was gifted by Jehovah God. They don't necessarily have to be the same as yours. And you don't have to like the way I teach my kids. It's okay. You are the teacher, not me. You are the person that God placed over those kids. So you have the freedom and the privilege of choosing what methods and ways of teaching you want to use with your kids. Give yourself permission. God has given you that permission. You don't want to sit inside at the table? Well, then go out in the backyard and do it. You don't want to be in the backyard? You don't like bugs? Go inside. You don't like books? Watch TV. You don't want TV in your home? Please get books. You would prefer to be hands-on? Do it. Make everything hands-on. You hate hands-on? You don't like mess? Then just stick your nose in a book with your children and love on them and cuddle on them and be the mom and the teacher that God gave your children. You're already equipped for that task. If nothing else, you have the Ruach, the Holy Spirit, living inside of you, who will speak into your ear saying, this is the way to go. This is the way. Walk in it. And He will do that for you if you will just but ask Him for wisdom each day. All right. What is the role then of curriculum? I've touched on this briefly. The curriculum such as Homeschooling Torah we would write, the curriculum that you might get from Rod and Staff or school, Switched on Schoolhouse or Matthew C. or Sunlight or Father's World or any of the millions of curriculum that are on the market. What is their role? Their role is to be your helper, not to be the leader. Okay, so when the book says, read page 16 through 19, answer the following questions. It sounds very authoritative, but you don't have to do it. You can read page 16 and stop for the day. You can take 6 months to read page 16 through 19 if you want to. Goodness, you can get to page 19 and say, that was so interesting. I think we're going to go to page 50 today. You can do whatever you want. You are the leader. The purpose of the curriculum is more to give you a track to run on, an idea of the path, a possible path, not the only path. And if anything, it just helps you stay organized. I like having the boxes to check every day. That's why we put check boxes in our curriculum, because it's for the mom who really enjoys putting things, marking it off. I did it. But even I wrote the curriculum. I don't follow it all the time. I hope that makes you feel better. I just don't. Goodness, I wrote it when my older 3 children were in those subjects. And now I have younger children in those subjects, and their personalities and styles are very different, and we just don't always decide to do that anymore. And sometimes that's why we update the website and add new ideas, because we change, you change, and it's okay. That's what I'm trying to tell you. If anything, the takeaway from this section is you are the parents, you get to decide. You have the wisdom, if you ask for it, from the Father above, and He will help you. And the curriculum company is not there to tell you that you must do it in 180 days. It is there only to give you an idea of how it could happen, not the way it must happen. I hope this is giving you a sense of freedom, that you can relax and just learn to love learning. To love learning about His creation, to love learning about His history, to love learning about His scriptures, to love learning about the way He put math together, to just enjoy observing and seeing and kind of getting that delight back again. Not the schedule and the routine and the rigidness, but oh wow, what an amazing world this is. I am so privileged to be able to have this time with my kids, and you know what? What's the rush? We've got 20 years till they're an adult. We can take our time. All right, what do? We're often asked about tests and grades. Oh boy, see, now we're coming right back to the same question again. What is the purpose of a test? Well, in the United States, back in the day, they had one-room schoolhouses, and the teacher would usually seat the youngest students in the very front, probably because they were wiggly and she could keep her eye on them. I don't know, I've heard stories in books about those naughty kids in the back. Sometimes those big boys, didn't want to be at school. But generally speaking, they would be arranged by grade. And a grade was just, when you finished this book, you may move back a seat. And I will give you a new book that you may work on. And when you've got that one done, you move back a seat. It wasn't, you're in this grade because it's September 1st and you're 12. It wasn't like that. You actually had to finish the book before you could move back to the next grade, the next graded level of the book. You can go on Google Books sometime and search very old textbooks from the early 1800s, even the 1700s, and it's really cool. You'll see exactly what I'm saying. They had to finish basic arithmetic, and when they finished that, they went into algebra. It was simple as that. There was none of this kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, factory-like stuff where you put a kid in at age 5 and out they pop at age 18 and they're educated. No, they were all together. Now think about another thing. The kids in the middle row were hearing, I didn't tell you about tests and grades. So the kids in the front row, the little kids, maybe she would teach them some spelling words, and they would have to write them on their slate. And then they would have to come to the front of the classroom, to her desk, and face the class often, or maybe face her desk, and recite their lesson. To recite your lesson means to tell the teacher, in the words of the book, what you learned that day, and she would ask you questions about it and drill you and make sure you knew it. And if you passed, you could then move to the next section. You would go back to your seat, and the next group would come up and they would recite. Now, if that classroom, that one-room schoolhouse, maybe only had 15, 20 children in it, it was very simple for the teacher to see who was doing well, who needed more work, and who could move on to the next thing. The kids in the middle, I was saying, could hear the younger kids reciting, and they would be reviewing in their mind what they had learned when they were that age. You can just imagine, I remember that lesson. And the kids in the back row, when they came up to recite, the kids in the middle would hear their things and think, I can't wait until I have that lesson and I learn that thing. So you see how similar this can be to a family. Right now I have a 20-year-old, a 17-year-old, a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, an 11-year-old, an almost 9-year-old, and a 6-year-old. And my 6-year-old can hear my 20-year-old doing things for his job. My 20-year-old can hear my 6th grader learning things and go, I remember learning that. That's cool. Oh, I remember doing that project in science. And it's the same. It's the same thing. And my children, when they learn, I have them tell me what they've learned. We have discussion questions in there. And what that means is I ask them questions. They tell me what they've learned. And I can tell very easily if they've learned it or not. They can read a book on the couch and they're sitting there giggling, or they're so engrossed they don't hear me tell them to go make their bed. And I can tell by observing that they are learning. I can see it with my own eyes. There is really not that much of a need for me to administer a multiple choice test with bubbles to fill in to be fed into a computer that will, automatically grade everything. If they do well, great, you may go on. Sometimes in math I like to administer a test because and then I don't have to check them all. I don't have to come up with the questions. I can just take the curriculum out, give them the test, and now it becomes more similar to a teacher that is in a public school in modern times, and she has all these students and she doesn't have time to check it. I don't necessarily want to take the time, so I can just check it against the answer key. Okay, good, you got them all right. Got 100%, fantastic, you get a piece of candy. And the same with spelling. That sometimes is an easy one, but history, we were maybe sitting in the backyard in a circle and discussing, the George Washington crossing the Delaware River. And why do I need to give a test on that when my child and I had a fantastic discussion, and of course I can tell he knows it. I might review things here and there, review my timelines, review dates and things, but I don't necessarily need to have a fancy test. That's the point I'm getting to. The purpose of testing and grading is only for the teacher and the principal. Nowhere, as far as I know, in the United States is a grade turned in. Colleges might ask, what was your child's grade point average? Well, you can kind of roughly say, well, it was really good in chemistry, but not so good in whatever. Let's see, we should pick one. Algebra 2 was a little tricky. I'm going to give him a B in that one. But chemistry, he did really great, and I'm going to give him an A. Man, I had to pull teeth to get him to do blah, blah subject. So in that subject, I'm going to give him a C. And I don't actually encourage you to do C's, because I encourage you to work with your children until they know it well and give them an A's and B's. A's if possible. Seriously, work with them. Get them to that point, if you can. But anyway, they might ask for those grade point averages, but other than that, you're never going to need to turn in a grade. No one's going to ask you. Grandma, she might ask. Just tell her, oh, they're getting pretty much straight A's. Aren't you proud of them? But as far as you as a teacher looking at your children, you can tell what they know by just observing and discussing and having a conversation with them. And I really encourage you to do that. As far as keeping records, at Homeschooling Torah, we have on our website for our members, under the Teacher Helps, on the menu at the top of the page, it says Teacher Helps. I encourage you to really explore that section. The very first tab says How to Use. I encourage you, if you're new, please go through every single thing on that page. It was placed there for you to help you truly learn how to use our curriculum. But then underneath that, you'll see planning forms. I encourage you, before you start your school year, to go through that, every single page. So under How to Use and planning forms, please do not ignore those sections. Go there. They will help you. They will help you get set up with records. They will help you print out attendance charts. So you can track things for the government if it is required in your state. They will give you a calendar so you can plan around feast days. You can plan around company coming. You can plan around vacations, and make sure that you're actually going to accomplish school with your children. It will give you a Together School Planner, which basically is my teacher planner. It helps me, it gives me my check boxes that I can check off each day so that I know that I actually accomplished school. It will give you independent checklists that you can give to each of your children. They can do their work independently, some of it, and you can know that they got it done. I like to insert some of these things into plastic sheet protectors and mark off with a dry erase marker. Let the kids mark off what they've done each day, and then we can wipe it clean. That's just a suggestion. You don't have to do it that way. So I do recommend that you go through the website and that you really pay attention The only supplies that you need, really, to get started this year for homeschooling, I suggest a whiteboard. You don't have to have it, though. You could just hold up a piece of paper each day, and write on it, and there's your whiteboard. It's whatever you have at hand, but I love whiteboards. I won't lie. They're just great for explaining things. You can get small ones very inexpensively, probably at a local dollar store. Or you can get a nice big one for your wall. I suggest Amazon or Office Depot. Watch for sales. See what God provides for you. eBay, check Craigslist. A binder, a 3-ring binder, one for you and one for each of your children, and maybe a couple extra that you can use to display some of the work that they're learning. As your children are learning things, especially in history and science and some of the subjects where there is more content that they're learning, they can make pages that display it all. And you can put them in there page after page and keep adding to it throughout the years. And it becomes an amazing treasure. Now, this is something to show Grandma when she comes to visit. And she'll understand, oh, wow, your children did that. They did wow, that's cool. Even down to your little kindergartners that are coloring each day. They can display their work in notebooks. So binders, get them on sale in the summertime. They're cheap. You don't need them to be heavy duty, except for maybe the one that your child is using each day. The rest of them can be cheap ones because they're just storage. Paper and pencils, and if you're using our curriculum, you might need a printer. If you can't afford a printer or don't have room or space or time to get one, go to that how to use section of our website, and there's a page about printers, and there are companies that you can send the file online. You can upload all of our curriculum to them, and they will send it to you in a couple days in the mail for an incredibly cheap price. Honestly, it's competitive with being able to purchase a printer yourself and fill it with ink. If you can go for getting a laser printer instead of an inkjet, you will save yourself money, but maybe you don't have that to invest this year. I didn't. For 20 years, I didn't have one. So don't worry if you don't. Basically, what I'm saying, the only supplies you need are you. That's the supply your child needs most. Everything else is optional. You don't have to have a bunch of fancy things. If you only get one thing done each day, I suggest it be God's Word, that you spend that time with them with your Bibles open and discussing. It says in 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17 that all Scripture is given by inspiration, by the breathing out of God, and is profitable for doctrine, which means teaching. That's what we're doing. For reproof, for correction, and for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God, the little girl of God, that the little boy of God may be perfect, thoroughly furnished to every good work. There's a lot of words in there that you can take to the bank. It's a promise of God. If you will trust in His Word, that's the only thing you get done. And you didn't get algebra done, and you didn't get vocabulary done, and foreign languages, and laboratory fancy setups in your kitchen, and all of this. The only thing you get done, the only thing necessary, as Mary and Martha discovered when Yeshua, their rabbi, sat in their home. Choose the one necessary thing, the one good thing. Choose the thing that will last for eternity, if that's the only thing you get done. I pray God's richest blessings on you as you start your homeschooling year. If you have questions and you're one of our members or not one of our members and you're just considering using our curriculum, we encourage you to go to the contact button at the top of our site and send us an email. Let us help you out. Ask us questions. We'd be thrilled and honored to be able to help you, and that's the easiest way to get in touch with us. We're there. Sometimes some of the harder questions might give us a day or two to think about it and pray about it and discuss how we might answer.